right, everybody. Hello and welcome back. We are here, episode number 10. Just the two soldiers today. We're down one man. Unfortunately, there Armand, he had a quick little operation there about, I don't know, 3-4 days ago, and he's still battling back from that a little bit. So giving a little time to recuperate. But that just leaves me with myself here, Jordan Kerr, and we got our other co-host Zach Strong. So Zach, maybe what's going on here? Enjoying the nice little warm weather, the holidays, day one. So what's
Yeah,
been keeping
day
you busy?
one, day one of summer holidays. I spent sprawled out on my couch, not unlike Armand. My back's been bugging me for about a week here, so been walking around like Fred Belindikoff, but instead of stick 'em all over my hands, I have icy hot. My dog absolutely loves it. She's chasing me around the house whenever I get up.
Unreal. Yeah, man. Teachers gotta love it right now. Summer holidays. It was a long grind, so I guess we enjoy the warm weather here while we got it for a little while. Speaking of teacher stuff, I guess I will mention myself. I'm a teacher here, but I actually just took on a new position starting next year, so I will not actually be teaching next year. I'll be a educational consultant. So I really got to soak in this cup a little bit of warm weather because starting up a little bit earlier than the teachers and get myself ready to go for next year with my new position. So we'll enjoy the warm weather while we can before we're back working away. So um I guess before we get started here, you guys, just kind of starting on a little bit of a down note. This episode that we are going to be sharing today was going to be a Canada Day special, but just with everything going on, we're going to pivot a little bit away from the Canada Day focus and maybe just a little bit more on Canadian individual players. As I know Canada Day is coming up, and it's a little bit of a sensitive conversation right now with especially everything that's been happening here in Canada, starting with the Kamloops news a while back, and now a little bit of what's going on here, even in our own Saskatchewan back door, our backyard, I guess. So, with it being a little bit of the sensitive topic, obviously, before we begin here, we want to share our thoughts and prayers to the families and anybody who has been impacted by the residential school system. Obviously, it's not a new concept. It's been it's been a sensitive conversation point for Canada for a long time, and now obviously we're starting to hit that pivot point where I think people that were kind of in the shadows or people that didn't really understand it much, I think now it's becoming obviously not only national but international news as well too. So obviously our thoughts and prayers are out to everybody that's impacted by the residential school system, and obviously we don't really like to talk about the negative stuff. We try to stay kind of politically neutral on the podcast a little bit and try and stick just to the fantasy football stuff or at least the happier news. But we thought obviously as the three of us hosts, we kind of figured that we probably should make sure that we mention this and obviously send our thoughts and prayers out to anybody affected by that. So I guess a little bit we'll pivot away from the unfortunate news, I guess, and we'll kind of get ourselves going for the rest of the podcast here. But like I mentioned, we're going to focus predominantly on the Canadian football players as the July 1st day is coming up here, one day after this episode will drop. So focusing on the Canadian players in the NFL that are making an impact. So I guess away from the tough news and into some of the more exciting news, I guess, from myself and Zach. We shared it on Instagram there. I guess what day would have been, Wednesday or Thursday, I can't really remember, but Zach and myself both got the invite to the Scott Fish Bowl, hashtag SFB11. So this is the 11th season. It was actually kind of neat because talking to a few of our fans a little bit, they reached out to us like, oh man, what does this Scott Fish thing mean? Like, tell us a little bit about that. So I guess, Zach, maybe you want to give the listeners the quick Cole Notes version of what Scott Fish is, what the league's about, and then I guess what our position is, I guess, going into the tournament.
Sure, yeah. So without knowing everything about the size of the league, it's around 1,900 players. I think it's 1,920 different players from around the world. Some of them are celebrities. Some of them are the analysts that you guys listen to on other podcasts. Guys like Michael Fabiano, big names like that are in the main league. And Jordan and I weren't quite lucky enough to get into the main league this year, but we are in the satellite tournament, which is a best ball style tournament, super flex format with a tight end premium. The really neat thing about the satellite tournament is the winner of each 12 team division will get a automatic bid into the main tournament for next year. So
Which this
really
tournament's
excited.
like it's almost impossible to get into. It's very prestigious tournament. So you can like anybody can apply, but the chance like it's held for a small percentage of fans, mostly analysts, celebrities, all those types of individuals as well too. So for even us just to kind of get the satellite invite was a pretty big deal for the two of us, I guess.
Absolutely. I remember, yeah, I think it was Tuesday. No, it must have been Wednesday that, or Thursday perhaps even, that I found out. And as soon as I found out, I put it in our little group chat, and Jordan was like, "Oh, like that's awesome, congrats." He's like, "Oh, I gotta go check." So waiting with bated breath, and yeah, sure enough, a few minutes later, we're celebrating.
Yeah, it was low key pretty jealous. It's like, oh damn it, Zach got in, that lucky guy. And then I was like, wait, maybe I should check my email. I haven't checked my email this morning. And oh yeah, it was a it was a pretty exciting day for the both of us. But so we're like we mentioned a little bit on the Instagram there. Zach is in the Mac Miller division, and myself, I'm in the corn division. It's split into this year they did musicians and different bands and artists and stuff like that. So obviously with there being so many divisions, so many conferences, you got to figure out some sort of a mutual way to, or a neutral way, I guess, to try and connect everybody in their divisions and conferences and stuff like that. So yeah, Zach being the Mac Miller and myself being the corn. We even talked about even in the like satellites, there's some pretty big names. Like my division, I have four analysts from the Fantasy Pros podcast. I have two from the Dynasty Nerds podcast. I have one from the Fantasy Footballers. So there's some pretty big names in there. So I mean, if we can hold our own in these tournaments and kind of make a little bit of noise, be pretty big for us, obviously, in our platform. So that's some pretty exciting news for Zach and myself, and then Scotty Fish. I guess the one thing we will mention too is the whole tournament itself is a charity league. So the whole thing is charity based, and all the money goes to different charities. And I think a lot of people follow with the hashtag Fantasy Cares is kind of the main platform that follows the Scott Fish Bowl as well too. So obviously that's pretty big for Zach and myself, and hopefully we can bring a little bit of bragging rights back to our podcast as we enter Scott Fish, because our draft is actually 1 week from today. We're recording on the Monday, so our draft starts exactly in 7 days. So we've got a lot of preparation coming into that. The strategies for the draft is totally different than kind of what your standard redraft or your standard best ball draft is, because obviously you're trying to beat thousands of people. So we'll keep everybody listed or posted as we kind of go through this, or not only our draft, but then as the season progresses in that one too. Obviously it's a big one for us. So I guess that kind of does a little bit for the intros there. Just anything else there you want to add, Zach? Or
No, it's gonna be really exciting. Lots of different rules and kind of settings in that league. So I'm really excited to dive right in and try my hand at things that I haven't tried before. So
absolutely. So I guess we'll get ourselves going here. Insiders and headliners. A little bit of a slow couple weeks for news. Mostly the hype stuff, the pump up pieces. You know, this player's primed up for a good season. This guy's getting ready for this. So it's kind of hard, especially as people that are fantasy football fans, to be able to decipher what do these pieces mean. Because I mean, obviously it's the same thing every year. You're trying to hype up your players and get them ready to go for the next year. But a few pieces. Demaryius Thomas retired after 11 seasons. He was dominant in Denver, kind of fizzled towards the end of his career there, but obviously had some big time fantasy years as a Denver Bronco. Antonio Brown's probation ended a year early. He's playing regardless, but now once again, it's just kind of one of those things that just we don't have to monitor the Antonio Brown scenarios anymore. This one's kind of a neat one. I kind of want to hear what you think after this, because when we listen to coach talk, I always mention coach talk. I don't really buy into the positive stuff because it's the coach's job to hype up the players. But if a coach comes out and says something negative about a player in the offseason, I kind of direct my attention to that a little bit more than obviously I would the positive. And obviously take with a grain of salt, because until you have visual evidence or something that would back the coach talk, is kind of hard to go into. But this one's a little bit interesting. Urban Meyers came out and says that Trevor Lawrence is not ready, quote unquote, not ready. What do you like? He's going to be the week one starter. Like I don't know if that's like just he's still got a long hurdle to go, or he's not projected to be this unbelievable 101 pick they're going after. But or do you think it's just trying to light a little fire under them? But Urban Meyers has kind of put some wonky reports out there, and I thought this was one of the ones that's a real head scratcher.
I don't know. I think this might just be coach speak. Like like you said, I don't think they're going to go with the mullet down there. I think they're sticking with
Yeah,
Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. So
Gardner
I think
Minshew.
it could just be an instance of Meyer wanting to just like downplay the hype a little bit. Um, like I'm sure Jacksonville is just in a frenzy that they have to be absolutely stoked to have Trevor Lawrence. So it might just be Urban's attempt to downplay and to just kind of calm everybody down, being like, don't expect like an MVP type season from this young man. He's still like 21 or 22. Just, keep your expectations realistic. Um, I'm sure he's thrilled with him, I'm sure.
Just gonna put more attention to
I
Tim
think he's just
Tebow
trying to
there.
manage. Yeah, and I think that I read reports that was the rumor with the Tim Tebow signing. They brought him in shortly after the draft or before the draft, I'm not sure, to possibly take some of the media circus away from Lawrence. So I think Meyer knows what he's doing. He's been a very successful head coach in the college ranks everywhere he's gone, so he knows what he's doing.
This one, it might be something to monitor a little bit. Jonu Smith, this was about a week ago too. What was quoted as a rain-soaked practice. So I guess the boys are balling out in a pretty wet situation there. Especially you as a New England guy might be able to give us a little bit more insight. Jonu Smith with the hamstring tweak. Is this something that we need to be worried about coming into the season, or is this a little bit of a minor piece there? But obviously, you as our New England insider guy, we'll see what you gotta figure about this one.
So what the Patriots do is they don't have, I don't know if it's this way for the rest of the teams in the NFL, but the Patriots typically don't have media access to all of their off-season practices, their off-season workouts. So when Smith did get hurt, there was media availability at that practice, and everything I listened to, everything I read, just said that he tweaked it. I think he went inside to get it checked out, but then finished practice back on the field. So I don't think it was as much as a of an injury. I think it was more of a precaution, knowing that it was the end of June when it happened. Training camp's not for another month. Um, this is a pro. This is a veteran player. It's not a first year guy that you have to uh, you know, see what he has, see if he can make the team. This guy's your prized free agent signing.
Yeah.
Like, there's no sense in busting it before it happens.
Yeah, give him time to rest, and he should be good to go for spring camp for sure. This one when we anticipated this to happen when we were talking on the last podcast there, we were anticipating it to happen, but the Jets and Jamison Crowder negotiate that contract. We kind of thought maybe he's just going to get outright cut. And then there was a report that came out that they were asking him to cut his contract by 50%, which I guess it's hard to remember that James Crowder, he's like 28 years old. He's not very old. Like he's still got a lot of years left in him. But they do negotiate a $5 million contract, which 4.5 million is guaranteed. So next year he will become a free agent. So they keep him locked down for this year. I think that's a great move personally for the Jets. You have a young quarterback coming in, and now you have a proven veteran receiver there that's going to be able to help carry a little bit of the load. I know you got a couple other a little bit younger receivers. You got a rookie, you got a younger receiver in Corey Davis that took a little bit of while to get the motor going. Now, I guess this year it's going to be, was it a one-off? Is he actually good to go? But you definitely, I definitely think they needed a veteran presence on that core to not necessarily a safety blanket, but definitely give somebody to show the young guys how to work, and then obviously help out your young quarterback as well too. So, especially with Corey Davis with him going down with the shoulder injury there in OTAs, so you definitely want to be able to make sure you got the older and the depth receiving core to help out the young quarterback.
And as the only established returning player too,
Yeah,
like Denzel Mims is in his second year. I'm sure he doesn't have everything figured out at this point.
especially missing a good chunk of the season.
Yeah, and it being a COVID year too, things were definitely a little bit different. So yeah, it was a smart move for both sides. like, yeah, it's a 50% pay cut, but you still get 4.5 million guaranteed. So it's probably a good look.
especially going into a contract year where
Yeah.
you could have just been cut and somebody could have picked you up and then who knows where you're at. At least now you're well, quite possibly the one on the team.
Mhm.
And then you use this year as leverage going into a contract year and hopefully get another decent contract to kind of finish your career out, I guess. So the last little piece of news, pretty minor, but maybe in dynasty leagues, this might be something interesting to follow, especially if you're not a Jalen Hurts believer. But the Eagles signed backup quarterback Nick Mullins from San Francisco. I guess if you're not a Jalen Hurts believer, then this might be a good dynasty pickup. Go scoop him if you think that Hurts isn't the answer and they're going to be looking for somebody at the queue. Personally, I think Hurts is going to be definitely somebody that is going to be a high target in fantasy football this upcoming season. So it's going to be hard to say that Nick Mullins is going to replace him at any point this season. But especially if you're in a deeper dynasty league, I think that might be a nice little go pickup because I can't imagine too many rosters have Nick Mullins sitting on their roster, especially going into the 2021 season.
Or if you have Hurts, scoop up Mullins if you can. Like,
The insurance
we've
policy.
we've seen these athletic quarterbacks that scrambling is part of their game. We've seen them get hurt plenty of times. So yeah, get yourself that insurance.
But yeah, so that kind of does it, I guess, for us, the insiders and headliners. Like I said, not a whole heck of a lot to report, but just enough to kind of just kind of give you guys a little bit of stuff going on the 2 weeks. Hopefully, it's the upcoming next couple weeks here as you start prepping a little bit more for spring camp and all the little news pieces might be coming. But let's get her going into keep trade cut. Now, this is usually Armand's segment, and we give our little 2 cents to Armand, but obviously with him not being here. We're going Canadian NFL Players Edition. So Zach's going to tell everybody what he thinks, and then I'll kind of give my 2 cents into it. Canadian player, we were thinking about going Claypool, but that made it a little bit too obvious, I think, with the 3 players we got in here. So we got 2 players that are brand new into the NFL, almost playing the unknown game. In rookie startup drafts, they're going kind of late thirds, maybe even in the 4th round, a couple of these guys. And then we have the known, but the possible the previous 101, but could be with the New England receiving corps. Could he maybe have a late surgence in his career? We'll see. So we got we got N'Keal Harry from New England. We got Chuba Hubbard from Carolina, and then we got Josh Palmer from the Chargers. So 2 rookies, and then a couple years into the league here, but relatively unproven Canadian as well too. So Zach, tell the people what you figured. Keep trade cut N'Keal Harry, Josh Palmer, and Chuba Hubbard.
So when I got the message that it was my turn to do this, I was I didn't know what to do with Chuba or Josh, so I knew what to do with Harry right away. Um, Got to cut bait with Harry, so I'll cut N'Keal Harry. That pains me as a Pats fan, but also as an owner of him in multiple leagues. I made that heavy investment his rookie year. Um, Actually, no, I bought him last year in one league for a 2nd round pick, and then in the other league I drafted him with the 1-2 rookie pick his rookie year. So he just hasn't performed yet. He was kind of in Belichick's doghouse his first year, it seemed, or Brady's doghouse more likely. And then last year, Cam Newton just couldn't get things cooking. So I'll cut bait with Harry, especially considering the players that they've brought in this offseason, a couple tight ends, 2 more receivers. So I think he's on the outside looking in. I'm going to keep Chuba Hubbard. I think he's in a pretty good position right now to start his career behind McCaffrey, who's coming off an injury himself. If McCaffrey gets hurt, Hubbard can go in and be a starter most likely for you. Also, perhaps Armand's made this argument a few times. He believes McCaffrey is going to be receiving less touches, so that might just open the door a little bit more for Hubbard. So I'll wait and see with him, and I'll keep him on my roster. So Josh Palmer, I'm going to trade, and interestingly enough, I think I like Palmer the most out of these 3 guys. But over the last 2 months, Palmer's gone from a relatively unknown commodity to somebody that might be a very popular sleeper pick in a lot of redrafts, I guess. Um, he was somebody that I had my eye on going into the third round of every rookie draft that I did. I was hoping to get him, and I was never able to get him. I think the one draft he went the pick before me. So, but now on Twitter, it's a name that's getting a lot of buzz, a lot of excitement from beat reporters. The beat reporters are pounding that drum. So I think he's somebody that you might be able to turn around and flip right now if you have him for a proven commodity or a higher or an earlier rookie pick in a coming year. So maybe you picked him up with the third round pick this year. Maybe you could find a guy that wants to gamble a bit and you get his second round next year. So I think he's the one that carries the most value right now just because of the buzz. So I would trade him.
That's interesting. It's just like for me, I would keep Palmer and trade Hubbard. Just I think they're very similar, and I think personally, I'd rather like myself. I like Palmer, just I like his situation in Los Angeles there. And it's funny, like you mentioned, like trying to trade, like so trying to get him late in the drafts. I had my eyes on him everywhere. Unfortunately, just didn't have the draft spots to pick him up. So then
Yeah.
I put feelers out to a lot of the guys that did draft him, and they're like, okay, no, I want this. Well, a lot of drafts he was going in that like I would say in our 10 team draft, I think he went like the 404 maybe or the 402. And then in my 12 team, he went in like the 312. And then my 16 team, like I think he went 210 or something like that, or 301 or something. I can't remember. But
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're asking, okay, well, what do you want for Josh Palmer? I'm interested. Well, second round pick. It's like you drafted him with your fourth round. No, I want a second rounder. It's like he hasn't even had a professional snap yet. But just like you said, the Twitter buzz, I think, is getting a little bit out of control. It's just, I think, in a situation where you obviously have Keenan Allen's the clear cut number one. Mike Williams is getting a lot of buzz right now, and he's a guy that I want to talk about lots coming into the season because I think he's really slept on for obvious reason with the injury concern and stuff like that. But obviously, if he goes down, who's stepping into that position? Well, Josh Palmer, he's a pretty big receiver, so I think he's going to be able to step into that role and could be the two. So just I like Palmer, so obviously I'm going to keep him and trade Hubbard just for personal interest. But I think we're obviously in agreement here on the cutting of N'Keal Harry. It's just too bad it just the 102 investment from some people on that. So all right. So I guess that'll do it for keep trade cut. We'll have to see what Armand figures because usually we're the ones kind of picking on him a little bit after this, especially that last one. That was a little bit of a good time. So now we'll have to answer to Armand for our decisions on this one. So segueing now into our offseason segment. What we're doing today is the all Canadian fantasy team. So obviously with us staying on the Canadian topics today, we went back and we found all of the very best seasons that any Canadian NFL player has ever had. And we pieced together that we'll have the top, basically, if you're picking only Canadians, will be your best team you could possibly ever have. So the all Canadian fantasy team and half point PPR scoring with a starting lineup of a single quarterback, two running backs, two receivers, a tight end, a flex, and a kicker. So we have an 8-man team starting lineup here. And I'll let Zach take it away here with our all Canadian fantasy team, starting off with our quarterback.
All right. QB1, we have Mark Rippon of the Washington football team, formerly the Washington Redskins. Mark was from Calgary, Alberta, and he played in the NFL from 1988 until 2001. Mark was drafted in the sixth round, 146th overall in 1986. In 1991, he had his career year where he put up 251 fantasy points over 16 games. He threw for 3,564 yards, 28 TDs, 11 interceptions with one rushing touchdown, good for just over 15 and a half fantasy points per game. That season, he led the Washington team to the Super Bowl, where he was named Super Bowl MVP. Mark finished his career with 1,175 fantasy points.
Yeah. So obviously maybe a guy that's would be like you'd mentioned, we were talking about a little bit before the podcast started. Maybe not your early draft pick or your clear cut QB1, but if you're in a super flex league, a really competent QB2 or maybe a streamer for the bye weeks or something like that. Because obviously you're not really 16 is kind of that little pinnacle point where it's like, okay, you're definitely is not going to lose you a week, but it's not going to win you a week either. But especially for Canadian, the Super Bowl is kind of cool. That's a cool little statistic for a Canadian quarterback. And even connecting it now to our current NFL, his nephew, Brett Rippon, actually started for the Denver Broncos for, I think it was for 2 games, or he went in for half a game after an injury and he started the following week or something like that. But so the keeping the Canadian content going and even connecting into our current NFL, you got the Mark Rippon for our quarterback for our team currently, and then even his nephew, a starting quarterback for Denver. So a neat little connection there as well too. So I'll get going here with our RB1. I'm happy I got to take this one for the North Battleford connection, but we got Ruben Mays from the New Orleans Saints. Like I mentioned, he's from North Battleford, Saskatchewan. So especially 306, kind of cool to be able to get a Saskatchewan guy on our Canadian team. He played in the NFL from 1986 to 1993, and he was drafted in the 3rd round, 57th overall in the 1986 draft. In the 1986 season, his rookie season, he scored 209.9 points, so just about 210 points in 16 games, where he carried the ball for 1,353 rushing yards and punching it in for 8 touchdowns, averaging a little over 13 points per game. And then finishing out his career with 583.5 points. So really good Canadian football player, Saskatchewan, really cool connection there, even as for North Battleford. A little like side note here about Ruben Mays is actually pretty cool. My grade 12 year, we actually dedicated our practice field at North Battleford Comprehensive where I played. So he came down, we had a huge ceremony, and we named the practice field the Ruben Mays practice field. So he got to come down, and me and one of my best friends, we were linebackers in our grade 12 season. And obviously him being a running back is pretty neat. Me and him got a picture with Ruben Mays in this little celebration. So neat little connection here, obviously talking about on the podcast, but getting to meet him and being able to be part of the dedication ceremony of the North Battleford Comprehensive Field. So that's a neat little connection. So I don't know what's better for maybe probably being our RB1 on our team, I think, but anyways, a little 306 connection on our team all Canadians. So Ruben Mays, our RB1.
All right. Well, thanks, Jordan, for leaving me with the RB2.
Yeah, good luck pronouncing this name.
Yeah, I beg everybody's forgiveness and patience. Our RB2 is Tim Biak Butuku. It's a real tongue twister. Tim played in the NFL from 1996 until 2001. In the 1996 draft, he was picked, says 8th overall. And in 1999, he put up 718 yards, 6 TDs, 23 receptions, good for 189 yards. That season, he would have put up just over 14 fantasy points per game. And for his career, he had 510 points. In preparation for the podcast, watched some YouTube videos of Tim, more so just so I could try to study how the announcers pronounced his name. And all the credit in the world to those guys, because they could say that name without blinking an eye. And just looking at it, I'm getting nervous. So let's move it on.
Yeah, wrapping up our running back positions there.
Alrighty, so I'll take wide receiver 1. Wide receiver 1 was Nate Burleson of the Minnesota Vikings, but he also played a little bit for the Seattle Seahawks. Nate was from Calgary, Alberta originally, and he played in the NFL from 2003 to 2013. He was picked in the 3rd round, 71st overall in the 2003 NFL draft. In 2004, he put up 227 fantasy points over 16 games. He had 68 receptions, 1,006 yards, 9 touchdowns, 49 rushing yards, pardon me. Good for about 14 and a half fantasy points per game. Fun little tidbit for me, at least, about Nate Burleson is growing up every year when I got the Madden game, I'd make sure I put Nate on my roster because I needed to have that Canadian content. So every year, Tom Brady would win MVP, and Nate Burleson would be the offensive player of the year. If if Brady had like 50 touchdowns, you could pretty well guarantee Nate had 50 touchdowns as well.
You're a bold-faced liar if you play Madden and you say you don't have your favorite targets when you're playing the franchise mode and yeah, you get 89 touchdowns for one receiver and the other guy's like, yeah, I need to get the ball. It's like, no, you don't. Sorry. No, you don't. Kevin
Yeah,
Johnson's getting 80 scores this year.
exactly. And whether or not the game said Burleson was like a 75 overall player, no, I'd always go set him to like 99 everything. Just an unstoppable force.
His Madden 99 is coming in the mail there from EA Sports. He'll get it in the mail.
Yeah.
Wide receiver number 2 on our team. This one, I think eventually, or we'd speculate, would take over the wide receiver 1 position on our team. But he had a very, very successful rookie season this past year. Put him up on the wall this week. Chase Claypool from the Pittsburgh Steelers, originally from Abbotsford, British Columbia. He's playing, obviously, his rookie season in 2020. He's still currently in the league. And he was drafted second round, 49th overall in the 2020 draft. In this past season, he had a breakout early and then unfortunately kind of just fizzled a little bit with offense struggles in the second half of the season with Pittsburgh there. But he had 217 points in 2020, playing in 16 games. He had 62 receptions for 873 yards with 9 scores, and he had 16 rushing yards with 2 rushing TDs as well, averaging out for 13.5 points per game. But I think what best be known was at week 3 when he put up like 56 points in the 1 week. So he had an unbelievable start and breakout early as a Canadian, and kind of got Chase Claypool on the map and became a pretty household name in a hurry, and obviously brought a lot of attention to Canadian NFL players real early in the season. So we speculate that he will become that wide receiver 1 on our team. Obviously, right now, his best season is that 217 points. So we'll see that maybe this season, it might be the season following. We'll see especially if he can take over that receiver 1 position in Pittsburgh, then obviously those numbers are going to continue to go up. So average running out our wide receivers, obviously we have Nate Burleson, getting us that 14.2 points per game. And then now we have Chase Claypool getting us 13.5 points per game. So 2 pretty competent receivers there as well. Getting into the tight end position. And I think this would be the epitome of saying that we threw the position to the late and hope for a hit. But Canadian tight ends were hard to come by. We have a couple that are still kind of kicking around in the league there a little bit. But more or less kind of blocking tight ends than maybe the offensive weapons that we're looking for in the fantasy world. But our tight end is OJ Santiago from the Atlanta Falcons, originally from Whitby, Ontario. And he played in the NFL from 1997 to 2003, where he was drafted in 97 there, 3rd round, 70th overall. In that 1998, he ended up scoring 100 points in 16 games, where he had 27 receptions, 428 receiving yards, and 5 scores, averaging only 6.24 points per game. So we kind of, in that situation, be like us drafting a tight end late and hoping it kind of hits. You're looking to maybe hit on a touchdown or something of that sort, but averaging out 6 points per game from your tight end is what we're going to be getting for our all-Canadian fantasy team.
All righty. At flex, we have Austin Collie, and Austin was from Hamilton, Ontario, where he played in the NFL from 2009 to 2013. He was drafted in the 4th round, 127th overall in 2009. During the 2010 season, in only 9 games, he put up 58 receptions, 649 yards, and 8 TDs. Good for 171 points overall, and just shy of 19 points per game over that span. I remember watching him as a Colt against the Patriots, and just being like, "Oh my goodness, not this again. Oh, there's another one. Oh, there's another one." Um, just like little dink and dunk passes from Manning that they were just like nickel and diming the Pats down the field. Extremely frustrating to watch, but happy that it was a Canadian, I suppose.
Well, and it would be pretty neat to see what he would have done that season with a full 16 games and not just 9. Like
Yeah.
it's in 2009 he put up the exact same numbers but in a 16 game season. Then he comes back in 2010 and in that short span looked like all of a sudden he was going to light the world on fire, but 16 game pace of 19 points per game is yeah, you're going to like that from your flex, especially when he's and like you would expect those numbers like you said in the 16 game season from the year previous. But where we kind of fell short a little bit on points from our tight end position, I think we definitely made that up in our flex and our kicker position because for our kicker, we're going to take Mike Vanderjack from the Indianapolis Colts, originally from Oakville, Ontario, and he played in the NFL from 1998 to 2006. He was undrafted, but played in the CFL for the Toronto Argonauts prior to going to the NFL. His best season that we're going to take here, it would be, man, if I could get these consistent points for my kicker in my fantasy leagues, I am going to be loving this. In 2003, he put up 171 points in 16 games. He went 37 for 37 on field goals, with the longest being 50 yards. So he's 100% on field goals, and he was 46 for 46, 100% on extra points as well. So did not miss one kick the entire season, putting up an average of 10.69 points per game. If I'm averaging almost 11 points for my kicker every single game, you're going to win a lot of matchups because that's the one position where you can just, it's a total crapshoot and anything can happen. But if you're locked in, like that's Justin Tucker confidence right there. So 11 points is definitely going to help us out from our kicker position, making up from our tight end spot. But he ended up scoring 1,163 points in his entire career, but obviously best known for the 2003 season where he went 100%. And maybe otherwise best known for the soundbite coming from Peyton Manning as well too. So that's going to round up our 8-man roster. So in the entire season, if we put these players together for one full season, we would have scored 1,500 points just from these 8 players, which would average about 106.5 points per week. So you may be thinking to yourself, okay, 106 points, that's not that much. But when you think about, we only have an 8-team roster. When a lot of people play in 9-man, 10-man, 11-man rosters, we don't have a defense on here. So just from our key positions of flex and our kicker to get 106.58 points, that's pretty good, especially when you're just piecing together some Canadian players. So that, like we were talking about, do we think this would be a team that maybe you could ride to the championship or making playoffs? Like I think I'd be pretty confident to say if I'm getting 106 and a half points just from 8 of my players, I would be pretty confident that I'm making the playoffs. But I think you have been hoping that maybe Austin Collie would have stayed healthy and maybe could have rode us to the championship. But I think that's a pretty competent team there from just Canadians alone.
Yeah, we'd be looking to stream our tight end position, I'm sure.
Yeah, maybe we'll get Luke Wilson in there a couple times.
Yeah. Anthony Auclair,
Yeah,
get the boys in there.
we'll just get a rotation.
Yeah.
So that'll do it for this one. Obviously, kind of not a whole heck of a lot of current NFL relevance, other than maybe just a little bit of Chase Claypool connection there. But having a little bit of fun here in the dog days of the fantasy football season. It's getting us prepped and ready to go for the upcoming season. There's not a whole heck of a lot to talk about, especially with us having an opportunity to maybe talk about Canadian players. We'll jump on that opportunity as well too. So we will mention before we get on to the next segment here that we have a segment in the full season when the actual fantasy football season is going on. We have a certain segment, so I don't want to give too much away about it, but we premiere one Canadian player that's in the NFL, and we kind of make a little bet on that person. So maybe the example would be if Chase Claypool going to score 15 points this upcoming week, and then we would talk about Chase Claypool, where he's from, his Canadian connection, kind of give a little bit of a bio about him, and then we'd bet on whether we think he's going to hit a certain fantasy point or et cetera, kind of thing like that. So we do have a Canadian content segment every week. We get into the actual fantasy season, so something definitely look forward to as a Canadian podcast. So I guess that'll do it for our all Canadian team. Maybe we'll get ourselves into ice cold hot takes here. Zach, what do you figure?
Looking forward to it. Let's go.
Okay, well, I guess we'll let you start it off here because I like your take here big time. So let's go, Zach's ice cold hot takes. Here we go.
Alrighty. So as soon as I found out we were doing the Canadian one a couple weeks ago, I made sure to call dibs on this player. So uh, my hot take is Josh Palmer will be the steal of all rookie drafts this year. So currently, Fantasy Pros has him as wide receiver 17 off the board in rookie drafts. I think he's going to blow that draft position out of the water by the time this season is all said and done. I think a lot of it has to do with, I think Palmer's pre-draft profile, Palmer's production from college. I think it's looking at it face value, it's underwhelming. But I think if you look a little bit deeper, you can take some meaningful takes away from it. So up until this most recent year, Palmer played behind Juwan Jennings and Marquez Callaway at Tennessee. Both of those players are in the NFL this year. Jennings was drafted in the 7th round, and Callaway was undrafted, but both NFL quality players that he was behind. His senior season, when he was the main receiver on the team, he put up 33 receptions for 475 yards and 4 scores while at Tennessee. So face value, not super sexy numbers, but Tennessee is in the SEC, and they are certainly not a powerhouse in the SEC by any means, and certainly not on offense. So those numbers were pretty decent for a very pedestrian passing offense overall. Um, when Palmer played the best was when he played against the top competition, the best defenders in the country. One of the best things about playing in the SEC is that you play against some of the best defenders. So this year, his senior season, he played against J.C. Horn, who was the 8th overall pick in the NFL draft. He played against Patrick Surtain, who was the 9th overall pick in the NFL draft. Played against Eric Stokes and Tyson Campbell, who were the 29th and 33rd overall picks, respectively. In those games against South Carolina, Alabama, and Georgia, he put up 213 yards, 14 receptions, and 4 TDs, as well as 11 first downs. So he played his absolute best football against the best competition. The types of dudes that he's going to see on a weekly basis in the NFL. Overall, for his season, 70% of his receptions went for first downs, which is a very valuable, um, I, I guess, a skill set. Getting open on third downs, being able to read the field, know where the sticks are. So
Especially piecing this in where we were talking about Scott Fishbowl, where you get additional points on first downs. So
right, exactly.
talking about knowing your platforms and knowing your scoring, or a guy that can pick up those first downs, like he could be, like you mentioned, that sneaky sleeper. Sorry to cut you off there, but I figured throw
That's
that
a good point.
nexus a little bit.
So looking at his size profile, he's 6 foot, 210 pounds, very similar size to Terry McLaurin, who was drafted 76th overall 2 years ago. They are not the same receiver, but very similar sizes. So he does have that NFL size. Right now, he's with the Chargers. I think he's probably entering the season maybe as wide receiver 4, possibly wide receiver 3, behind Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Mike Williams has never been able to stay healthy. When he's on the field, he's certainly somebody that you want on your team. He has been putting up pretty good points, but his issue is staying healthy. I think there's a very good chance that Palmer, given the right opportunities, potentially planning for a Mike Williams injury, could see plenty of play, plenty of production his rookie year. This year is Mike Williams' last year of his rookie contract. He could very well be gone, especially if he gets hurt again. and Josh Palmer could be walking into a starter position, not this year, but next year. So I think it might be a little too late to buy cheap on Josh Palmer, but maybe if you're in a or a dynasty league, pardon me, that does its rookie draft quite a bit later than the norm, somebody to keep your eyes open for, or maybe you could catch a sleepy owner and get him as a throw-in for a trade. So I think he has a lot of potential and somebody that I'm excited to watch, especially considering he's a Canadian.
Yeah, I like this take a lot. like we talked about in keep trade cuts, he's a guy I'm trying to go all in after, but it's getting harder and harder, like you mentioned. But uh, like I said, going into Scotty Fish, I think that's a guy that both of us obviously are going to be trying to look at late rounds. It's a 22-man roster, so it's a big draft. There's a lot of roster spots, so I like especially we're doing a lot of research into this draft and getting ourselves prepared for it. If you hit on those late round guys, like you're walking yourself into a championship. Like those guys that took Justin Jefferson kind of later on there, and that was kind of their gamble pick. Like if you got Jefferson in the say like 12th, 13th, 14th, whatever round, you were laughing yourself into into the championships, right? So if you can hit on one of those guys late, you're laughing. And whether that be Scott Fish, whether that be redraft, whether that be your home league, whatever that is, if you hit on those late guys, it just puts you way ahead of the game. So yeah, I like that.
Especially with it being best ball, like you don't have to worry about, is this the week Palmer goes big, or is this maybe this is more of like a Mike Williams game. But with it being best ball, I think Palmer would be somebody to definitely keep an eye on for sure.
It's like guaranteeing that you're going to have that Claypool week 54 points. You're guaranteed
Yeah.
to have that in your roster, right? Like that's the nice thing about best ball. You never make the wrong decisions. So, but yeah, I like that take a lot. I'm a big Palmer guy, so I like that take a lot there, Zach. Keeping on the Canadian path, I was trying to figure out how the heck I'm going to try and swing one of my takes into a Canadian, because they're few and far in between, unfortunately, right now currently, and you can't really say, oh, okay, well, Claypool is going to be a breakout candidate, even though some people are still saying he's going to break out. I was like, I don't know. I clearly think Claypool broke out last year, so I'm going to connect this, and you have to bear with me here. I'm going to really connect the dots here on the mental math here. But Laurent Duvernay Tardif, he's a Canadian guard for the Kansas City Chiefs. The Pro Football Focus has the Chiefs rated 7th overall for the top O-line. Obviously, there was a big shakeup for Kansas City on their offensive line. You saw in the Super Bowl that was their Achilles heel there. They couldn't get it going, right? So now obviously stacking up the offensive line. He sat out the 2020 season, so he's coming back in the 2021 season. There's reports that him and Long are going to be battling a bit for that right guard position, but obviously Pro Football Focus has them rated as one of the top offensive lines in the NFL. So the player that I want to talk about here, connecting all these dots, is obviously the guy running behind this offensive line, and that's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I've talked about him a little bit on the podcast previously, but he's a guy that I'm going to be trying to get as much as possible. Maybe not so much as my RB1, but if I can get him as my RB2, I'm gonna be all over that. Now, we're pretty early into draft season. Like Scott Fish is kind of the kickoff to draft season. It's like the first big draft. And then after that, they start happening a little bit more probably in August than anything else. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now, he's a guy that I want to jump on, even though I was totally against him last season. And the main reason for that is opportunities based on your average draft position. So last year, after the NFL draft, him going late in the first round, they're the very last pick of the first round, he was going the clear-cut 101 for dynasty rookie drafts. And then talking about redrafts, he was going in like the 107 position, going behind like the big names, the Derrick Henrys, the Kamaras. Then all of a sudden 107 is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Well, let's relax a second here. We hadn't even seen him do a professional snap. It's just because that you're in a high-flying, high-scoring offense, which is why they're taking him so high. Which, I guess, if you believe the hype, you go in on it. But the ADP was just way too rich for my blood, so I was totally out on him. Like I was thinking mid-second was probably as high as I wanted to go. Where if you actually look at his statistics, they weren't terrible, but just where the draft capital you put in, you weren't getting the same points back. So I think if you were a CEH owner last year, you were really upset about it. Where really, if you look at the numbers, it was well above average. So his ADP last year was anywhere between that mid to late first round, which, like I said, was much too late now, or much too early. Sorry. Now, currently his ADP is around pick 32, which puts him around the running back 18. So, my argument for Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the same argument why everybody wanted him so early last year. He's still in the same offense. He still has the scoring opportunities, and he's still a pretty talented player. This is going to be a make or break season for him. And I know there's a couple additions there in the backfield that may take some touches away from him, but I still think he has the opportunity to be successful in that offense. Okay, he was tackled along the goal line quite a few times where he was down, like he had a 15-yard run down on the one, and then Mahomes runs it in, or Mahomes checks it down to Kelsey, or, he just didn't get those touchdowns. He only had 4 touchdowns last year, 4 rushing and 1 receiving. So if you even give him, say, let's get 4 extra touchdowns, so he had 8, which is still, I'd say, probably below average for a running back, right? Like 8's kind of that RB, like you'd be okay, happy with it. So even if you gave him 8 touchdowns, he was a running back 1 last year. He finished as the running back. Oh, I don't have it written down here. I think he finished as a running back like 18 or running back 17 or something like that last year. I don't have it on the top of my head, but he was borderline RB2, like potentially even like closer to RB3, but he was within that like middle tier RB2 range. But if you just give him 4 extra touchdowns, which means like a couple times you get that shoelace tackle, but you at least just fall in the end zone. So 4 is not crazy to add for running back. He's finishing as a RB1. He finishes in that 12 spot, where then that 107 draft capital isn't as bad. And more people are like, okay, I'm in on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm in. But I think so many people were burned by him that the value is going the opposite way, where people are like, no, I'm totally out on him. I'm Joe Mixing it right now. I'm out on him. I don't want it. But now all of a sudden, like if I'm taking him 32nd overall, like RB18, you're getting him at like the 302, 303, 304. Like these are names that are going in front of him. DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders. Like to me, Clyde Edwards-Helaire's opportunity, like Swift is not like, that's not bad offense. It's a bad team. It's a bad offense. And that's coming from a Lions fan. Like it's not good. So he's not going to have a lot of scoring opportunities. Dobbins is still getting poached in the red zone by not only 1 player, by 2 players. So even though he's carrying the low between the 20s, as soon as he gets inside the red zone, Dobbins was yanked so many times. So he's going to be vultured too. So you're still hoping for a massive uptick in opportunities from Dobbins and efficiency. Josh Jacobs, we know Josh Jacobs' situation. It's not ideal. And Miles Sanders' situation, it's sketchy at best here. So when you look at CEH, not a whole lot has changed for him. There's a couple different bodies in there. Damian Williams is gone. He's in Chicago. I think he was one guy that people are a little bit concerned about, but he sat out the previous season. So I think he still has a solid opportunities. I mean, it's still Kansas City offense. They're still going to score lots. And if you're still the lead back for that opportunity, it's always been proven that if you're the lead back for that offense, you're going to be successful, especially an Andy Reid offense, right? So I don't think a whole lot's changed from him other than just the perspective from fantasy football people that, well, he sucked last year, he's going to suck this year. Well, I don't really think he sucked that much. The difference of him being an RB1 from an RB2 was not significant at all, and he still has the same opportunity. So my hot take is that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be a steal. He's going to be in that 3rd round, and he's going to be somebody that I'm all over, because if you can have him as your RB2, as a steady Eddie guy with serious upside, I think you're going to be pretty happy with that for sure. So
Absolutely. I agree 110%. Let's pretend that he goes 301 in a 12-team draft. So you could go conceivably, if you want to go RB heavy, start it off with the 101. You could go
CMC, you go Dalvin
CMC.
Cook, like
Yeah, so let's go CMC. Then you come back at 212 and you go like, I don't know, DeAndre Swift.
yeah.
And then you back that with Clyde. You have potentially 3 RB1s. So you have your RBs covered, and then you have a flex. You have a great flex.
You could even in that 212 position, you could go with somebody like Hopkins might not slide that far this year, but like a guy like Keenan Allen, Allen could be your wide receiver 1. Metcalf isn't going to slide that far, but like maybe a guy like what's his name there in New Orleans, Michael Thomas.
Yeah,
like he went from being the 107, 108 last year to all of a sudden you can get him in the late 2nd, early 3rd. So I mean, like you can have some serious upside where a guy like you said, the RB1s in a 3rd round, they don't come around very often, and usually they're gambles where I just don't see him as a gamble. I see him kind of as locked in RB2 guarantee. Like I just obviously barring injury, but
And then if you look at the 112 draft spot, you could start your draft with maybe Travis Kelsey.
Trask or
And
like or Eckler.
yeah, I was gonna say Kelsey at 12, Eckler at 2-1, and then you come back for the third round and you get CEH. That's a deadly team there.
Yeah.
So I think
And pretty
anywhere,
balanced.
yeah, anywhere in that third round, it's good value. Um, provided that he at the very least repeats what he did last season.
Yeah. So here's a name to throw out there because he's going to get drafted in around the same area. I think he's still getting drafted a little bit higher, but I think guys kind of treat them similar. Joe Mixon or Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
Good question. A lot of coach speak this year about Joe Mixon, but I think everybody and their mom's been burnt by Mixon at least once. So just for that reason alone, I'll go with CEH.
And people are treating CEH like he's Joe Mixon and Burns the last 4 seasons in a row. It's like, man, he was like, first of all, he's a rookie in a COVID year, not a lot of preparation. So to me, I just think that opportunity is going to go up. Maybe not necessarily up carry opportunities, but opportunity to grow in the offense, maturity, get stronger, get faster, get used to the NFL tempo. Like that's the thing. I think a lot of people, and this could be a hot take in itself, but like those rookies going into their sophomore season, I think if you can try and like get a couple of those guys that maybe had a little bit of a rough start that people are writing off already, like you got to remember they didn't have much opportunity, especially guys maybe like were hurt, like guys like Denzel Mims, guy like Jalen Reagor, maybe guys like that had a bit of a tough go this year, like Henry Ruggs. Like you got to remember those guys had they could be busts, but at the same time they didn't have an off season, so you might be able to get those guys late and hope for the hit, where guys are kind of writing off CEH like he had a bust season where he was a locked in RB2 with RB1 upside. Like
it just wasn't what everybody was buying, right?
Especially after I think the week 1, like it's kind of the same thing how people are choked about Josh Jacobs, where he actually had a really good season, but after the huge week 1, and then it was kind of just mediocre from there, which is kind of the same thing. CEH had that huge week 1. I think he had half his touchdowns in week 1. Like, so that's that won't do it for you. But yeah, anyway, CEH, buy him, buy. I'm trying to get him in Dynasty right now. It's a little bit harder because he obviously is a rookie and he had decent numbers on a good offense. So I guess if you're going to try and get him, you're almost overpaying. But like I think when you look at guys like Dobbins, Swift, like they're getting drafted and redraft higher them. I still think there's people in Dynasty that view those guys higher too. Like to trying to buy Swift, you're probably paying more for Swift than you would CEH anyways too. Where CEH I think comes a little bit more gamble in Dynasty, because I think this is kind of a prove it year for him, and especially in that offense where they're very win now and not setting up for the future. But I don't know. Yeah, big fan. Not so much last year. It's all based on ADP and based on where you think they're going to finish, and then obviously going from that average draft position based on value. So he's a huge value this year. Huge value. I think that's guess like that'll kind of do it for the hot takes today. So anything to add to this one here, Zach, before we wrap everything up?
No, just with the long weekend coming around, everybody be safe, be responsible, make good choices.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was thinking too. It's just I don't know about you, Zach, but I grew up in Battleford there. Long weekend, everybody's heading up to the lake. Obviously in PA here, big thing too is heading to the lake. Those highways can get a little scary. We like Highway 4 North there by Battleford. That one's like scary. How many people you see out there drinking and driving on that one, and the accidents and when everything that happens on there. So definitely, I'm gonna piggyback on that one. Like Zach, be safe. If you're out having some drinks, having a good time, find a safe ride there. Taxis, Ubers, parents, friends, whatever you got to do. Enjoy responsibly, obviously. Yeah, bicycles. Bike that hill uphill after a couple pops could be an entertainment in itself. But enjoy the long weekend, everybody. Enjoy the weather. I guess we'll be trying to enjoy the weather here. We're on holidays now, teachers, so we'll be kicking our feet up and relaxing for a little bit and hit the links a little bit. I start my master's next week, so I got one solid week of holidays before the master's kickstarts. So but I guess that'll kind of do it here, everybody. Thanks for listening to episode number 10, our all Canadian edition episode. I guess follow us on socials, 306 FFB. You'll be able to find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well. And then once again, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We definitely appreciate that. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any of the podcast platforms, be sure to like us and share our platforms as well. We definitely appreciate that. So thanks again, everybody. That was episode 10. Take care there and enjoy responsibly this weekend. Thanks, everybody.